Okay, great. All right. So like Jenny said, Lindsey and I have both been with Support Kansas City for a little over 4 years now. And we do work on the accounting side of things. So we want to talk about QuickBooks today. And I'll just start with some background on why Support Kansas City uses QuickBooks. There are a lot of accounting softwares out there, but we have found QuickBooks is very useful for organizations of different sizes. So from very tiny organizations to large organizations, it really spans the spectrum of what it can do. It's also a very affordable software. We use a website called TechSoup that provides discounted software to nonprofit organizations, and QuickBooks is an offering that they have through there. And Lindsey will talk a little bit later in the presentation about specific costs associated with QuickBooks. That's a little bit of background, just why we use QuickBooks mainly for the accounting software for our clients. Now, over time, QuickBooks has evolved. Intuit is the company that produces QuickBooks, and there's two different versions of QuickBooks that you can have. One is called desktop and one is online. And the desktop version lives on a server. So if you use QuickBooks Desktop as our client, that lives on Support Kansas City's server. And then just like the name says, QuickBooks Online is on the web. Intuit has shifted slightly over the past couple years in putting a lot of their development efforts into QuickBooks Online. They're definitely encouraging people to begin the shift away from desktop, but they do still support desktop. So we'll talk through some of the differences between the two versions of QuickBooks. And we do have some clients who use other accounting softwares besides just QuickBooks, desktop and online. We're open to whatever works best for organizations. If there's another accounting software that's a better fit, and then we encourage that for our clients. I'm curious if everyone on the call wants to put in the chat what version of either QuickBooks Desktop or online that your organization uses, or if it's another accounting software besides QuickBooks. We'd love to, it'd be interesting to see what everyone uses. Okay, so we have a couple desktops. Great, thanks guys. All right, so now Lindsey's going to talk a little bit about some of the differences between QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online.
All right. So when I started at Support Kansas City, we had very few clients who were in QuickBooks Online. I only had, I think, one client who was in online, but as we bring on new clients and some clients realize the benefits of being in QuickBooks Online, I have had some transition. And so I think about 25% of my clients are in QuickBooks Online right now, opposed to QuickBooks Desktop. So QuickBooks Desktop was released in 1983. So it's been around a while. They've had a lot of time to kind of test and perfect it. And then QuickBooks Online came out in 2001. So it's celebrating its 20-year anniversary. Within the last 5 years, they've really put a lot of time and energy into making it a useful tool. But there are some things that could be updated. But keep in mind, as we go out through this presentation, QuickBooks Online, because it is newer and is integrated with the web, that they have a lot of better integrations, and QuickBooks Desktop is kind of slow to adopt those. So QuickBooks Desktop, if you have QuickBooks Desktop, it needs to be housed on either a desktop or like a desktop server. So for our Support Kansas City clients, most of those are housed on the Support Kansas City server. And so we back up that server every night. So if something was to happen, a power outage, a natural disaster, we would have a backup copy of that file. But kind of a con of having it on a server is sometimes there's maintenance or it's a little bit slower, just depending on what's going on. So QuickBooks Online is based online. And so I think in my 4 years at Support Kansas City, I think it's been down maybe once or twice. So it's a lot more reliable in that sense. And they do all the backup of your data. And so if you are using QuickBooks Online, there's just a single login that you will log in through their website. And if you're using QuickBooks Desktop, each user will have to have the Support Kansas City remote desktop on their server or on their computer, and then they'll have a separate QuickBooks login once they get in. So QuickBooks Online, they use a lot of apps, so they have a lot of things that can be integrated, and Noelle will kind of go over those a little bit more in the presentation. But they have a lot of integrations, so you don't have as much data entry. QuickBooks Desktop does as well, but there's a lot fewer and they're a little bit clunkier to use. So QuickBooks only supports a version for 3 years. So right now our clients are in 2021. And so that will be supported for the next 3 years. But once it's after those next 3 years, QuickBooks won't support that version anymore. You can still use it. They just won't do any tech support on it. As far as QuickBooks Online, they're doing monthly updates and they're listening to feedback almost in real time compared to QuickBooks Desktop, where it takes a year or two for those changes to be implemented. So since QuickBooks Desktop has been around for a lot longer, it's a lot more stable. There's not as many bugs or hiccups that you'll find. But QuickBooks Online, they do have a lot of improvements that can still be made, and it can be a little bit buggy, especially around the time that they do their monthly update. You can find some things that will just disappear, but it always comes back. So one of the main reasons we like our clients to use QuickBooks Online is for the bank feeds feature. So this pulls in your bank data into QuickBooks, kind of into this holding account. So you can go in and code those before it's entered into like the financial side of QuickBooks. QuickBooks Desktop does have it. It's a little bit clunkier, and not all banks are supported through QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop. So every time you'd like to sync your bank, you'd have to put in your information to get that to sync in. If not, you could always download like a QBO file from your bank and upload that to bring in those transactions, but it's not as seamless as it would be if it is through QuickBooks Online. And in QuickBooks Online, a lot of the banks are supported through the bank feeds. So in QuickBooks Desktop, the number of accounts and classes is virtually unlimited. I think I read that there's like a 10,000 account limit. So if you have 10,000 accounts, you have a little bit more problems than just than running out of accounts. So in QuickBooks Online, depending on the version, which I'll go through a little bit later, there are limits on the accounts. So if you are in like the basic version, you're limited to 250 accounts and then 40 classes. So in both desktop and online, you're able to create and send customized invoices like directly through email. Because QuickBooks Online is a web-based service, it is a little bit easier and seamless to do. But you are able to do that through desktop as well. The same goes for online payments. You can accept payments both through QuickBooks Desktop and online. You also have the ability in both to attach files. So I have a client who's in QuickBooks Online, and with every transaction, so if they had a check that they wrote, they will upload the backup for that check to the expense in QuickBooks Online. So if I have a question, I can go in, look at the backup, and we don't have to be sending that information back and forth. You are able to do that in both systems. QuickBooks Online, again, is a little bit smoother because it is an online-based service. And then that client, they also share their bank statements with me through, you have the ability to share files back and forth. And so instead of using the Support Kansas City portal or email, they are able to use QuickBooks to get those files over to me. And it is a lot more secure than just sending those that information over through email. But you do not have the ability to do that in QuickBooks Desktop. So QuickBooks Desktop, it kind of requires a little more accounting knowledge and training. It's not as intuitive of knowing where to go to do certain things. But when they developed QuickBooks Online, they developed it with the non-accountant in mind. And so it's a little bit more user-friendly from that perspective.
You'll probably find that your bookkeeper, if you use desktop, prefers desktop, and usually the bookkeepers don't like online quite as much.
So here's just kind of a snapshot of what QuickBooks Desktop looks like. So if you're not familiar, it can look a little overwhelming of where everything is. And then here's a screenshot of the homepage of QuickBooks Online. So it's a little bit more streamlined, and you can see it's a little bit different of how to access everything. So the big question, how much does it cost? So QuickBooks Desktop Premier is what all of our clients use. For one user, it's $78, and then for 3 users, it's $168, and that's if you purchase through TechSoup, and I put the link down at the bottom to find those. And so Support Kansas City upgrades every 2 years. So you'd have to pay that price every 2 years if you are using QuickBooks Desktop and you access your file. So we have clients that we do all of the data entry and the client doesn't access at all. And so they don't have to pay that fee because it's under Support Kansas City's license. This is only paid if you access the QuickBooks file on the Support Kansas City server, or if you have it on your own computer. And then for QuickBooks Online, the Plus, which is kind of the more basic level, for a year subscription, and has 5 users, it's $75. And then for the advanced, with 25 users, it's $160. And so here's kind of a breakdown of the differences between Plus and Advanced. So with Plus, you get 5 users, 40 classes, and 250 chart items on your chart of accounts. And then with Advanced, you have 25 users, unlimited classes and chart of accounts. You also have the ability to batch enter transactions, which does save a lot of time. I think Noelle will be going over that a little bit more. And you also have the ability to customize the roles. So if you have someone who's only doing data entry, or you only want to have them doing certain parts of QuickBooks, you only have that ability to do in advanced. In advanced, you also have access to dashboards. And then you also have access to premium apps and integrations. So I think a lot of the basic ones you are able to use in Plus, but in advanced, you kind of have a little bit more. So our recommendation for our clients is if you have a long chart of accounts, you have a lot of complex reporting requirements or complex grant tracking, we recommend that our clients use QuickBooks Desktop. Some organizations that we would recommend to use QuickBooks Online are all volunteer organizations or organizations that have a lot less volume. Or if you have a lot of volume, that you use those third-party apps that talk to QuickBooks Online to kind of bring down the amount of manual entry that you have to do. And if you have a lot of invoices that you send through QuickBooks, we recommend they use QuickBooks Online for that.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Lindsey. And just as she talked through those things, if you're thinking, man, I think that QuickBooks Online would be a better fit for us, but we're using desktop or vice versa, that'd be a great thing to reach out to your bookkeeper, your Support Kansas City bookkeeper about and have a conversation with them. Now we're going to talk about, are you using QuickBooks efficiently? So assuming you are using QuickBooks, I want to touch on some ways that you can increase your efficiencies. The first thing I wanted to touch on was the automatic sync. So this is, Lindsey mentioned this earlier and referred to it as bank feeds. This top image here on the screen is an example of QuickBooks Online, and like Lindsey mentioned, QuickBooks Online is very easy to link your bank accounts, credit cards, PayPal, different accounts along those lines that you receive money in and can pay expenses out of. And we connect the two using the banking function in QuickBooks Online. It automatically pulls in all the transactions to a temporary holding place in QuickBooks Online, where either your SKC accountant or someone on your team that does the coding is able to go in and add an income or expense account to tell it what the transaction was for, and then it enters it into your system. This is really helpful for a lot of our clients. It reduces, the manual entry that you have to do. It's very efficient. And the bottom screen, I'm sorry, I got my images mixed up. The one on the top is from QuickBooks Desktop, and then the bottom screen here is what it looks like in QuickBooks Online. So you can do the bank feed setup with QuickBooks Desktop. It's a little bit clunkier. You're probably noticing a theme there. Desktop is not quite as nimble as online with different things like that. Something else I wanted to touch on is whether you or not you have a donor database. So if you have a database where you enter your donation information, income information, anywhere that you capture your gifts, we really want that to be working in tandem with QuickBooks. We try to work with clients to make sure that you're not doing duplicate data entry. So if you, for example, use Salesforce, we don't want you entering all of your details into Salesforce and then turning around and entering those again in detail in QuickBooks. So what that might look like is connecting the two. Not all donor databases can be connected directly with QuickBooks, but there are a couple different ones that can be connected directly. And if it's not possible to connect the two directly, we want to make sure that your donor database has the high level or the very detailed information, and then what's being put into QuickBooks is more high level to to reduce that duplication of entry. We also want to make sure that we're reconciling between the database and QuickBooks so that the income information is the same, just for the data integrity there. So Lindsey mentioned some third-party applications, and you can see from this list that QuickBooks Online is much greater, has much greater capacity for third-party applications than Desktop does. Bill.com is an accounts payable system that we recommend to our clients, and that does sync with both Desktop and Online. Expensify, expense tracking software system, that also syncs with both, but beyond that, you can see that QuickBooks Online that syncs with Salesforce, QuickBooks Payroll, Square, Expensify. There's the list. I didn't list them all out here because there's quite a few. Some of them are free to connect. Some of them you have to pay a fee to enable the third-party applications, but Online really beats out Desktop when it comes to that integration, which can save you time with reducing your manual data entry. The ability to reclassify transactions. So your accountant or whoever does your data entry, it can be efficient if you have a large amount of data that needs to be moved or recoded, change something about it, that you do have the ability in QuickBooks Desktop and Online to bulk edit and move items, which can save a lot of time. This is actually a lot easier to do in Desktop than in Online. In QuickBooks Online, you have to be an accountant user or have the advanced subscription. If you have the Plus subscription, it doesn't allow you to do that. And then recurring and memorized transactions and reports. This is just an easy thing that can add some efficiency. If you or your accountant are making the same journal entries every month, pulling the same reports every month, those can be memorized in QuickBooks Desktop and Online, so that you don't have to recreate the wheel every time you want to make that entry or pull those reports. This example up top here are some journal entries that are made every month, and they're used like a template. And then this bottom image here are some custom reports. So for example, if maybe we do your data entry, but you want to be able to go in and pull some reports throughout the month, that might help you with grant reporting or any other information that you need. We can set those up for you and memorize them so that you can go in and easily pull those. And that is everything we have for today. Does anyone have any questions?
There is one question in the chat, and the question is, if you got QuickBooks Online Plus, but then realized that you needed Advanced, are you able to upgrade, and how does that work, and is it possible?
Yeah,
yes,
good question.
It is possible. And I don't know how it works if you've purchased the license through TechSoup, but there is the ability in QuickBooks Online to change your subscription to that more advanced if you are in QuickBooks Plus. But I'm not quite sure how that works if you're purchasing your license through TechSoup. But if you have any further questions about that, we can always look into that more. And I guess Noelle and we didn't mention that we are both QuickBooks Pro Advisors. So she's the QuickBooks Pro Advisor for Online, and I'm the QuickBooks Pro Advisor for Desktop. So if you do have any questions about that, you can always reach out to us. And being the QuickBooks Pro Advisor, we have the ability to kind of jump in line. So we get priority. So where someone else might have to wait on hold for an hour, we get to avoid that.
So Jane has asked a question, how well does the transition go if you move from Desktop to Online?
It is, as far as transferring the data, it's It's the easiest transition in accounting. I have moved many clients from desktop to online, and it's very, very easy. They make it very difficult to go from online to desktop because they're pushing everyone towards online, so they don't really want to encourage that, but it's very easy to move the data. And then, we would typically do some type of training with you to help you get familiar with online.
And I think when you transition, if you're really familiar with QuickBooks Desktop, there will be kind of a steep learning curve on where to find things, how things are called. So it can be a little bit frustrating at the beginning when you do transition, if you are really familiar with QuickBooks Desktop.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions?
I'll just reiterate again, if we talked about anything today that you don't do currently, your accountant at SKC doesn't currently use the bank feeds or another efficiency that I mentioned, just reach out to them, let them know that's something you might be interested in, and I'm sure they'd be happy to work with you on getting that set up.
Another question has popped up. Can you go back and attach files to transactions after the month has been reconciled?
Yes, you should be able to. So you should be able to go into previous transactions and attach a file. That process looks a little different for online versus desktop. So we'd be happy to help with that process. But Lindsey, I don't know if the accountant has locked the file, if that would impact that at all.
I'm not sure, because in QuickBooks Online, I never upload anything to any of the transactions, so I'm not quite sure if the file is locked in both QuickBooks Desktop and online, if you have that ability.
Are there any other questions? Well, I want to thank Noelle and Lindsey for their presentation today, and I want to thank all of you for joining us. I'll be flashing 2 quick, easy questions up for you to provide feedback on today's session. Our next session will be on Thursday, October 14th at 2 p.m., and it's going to be the topic of Budgeting 2.0. This is going to build on our previous session, but really address in more detail functional reporting, administration, programs, fundraising, and really kind of that focus around what you need for grants and to provide to funders. Information about that will go out next week as well for you to be able to start registering. If you have ideas for future, and I'm going to go back with another question here in a second, Noelle and Lindsey. If you have ideas for future coffee cup topics, please enter them into the chat. And please let us know if you have any additional feedback, and please complete the survey questions that I've put out there. Another question that has, hang on 2 seconds, maybe 2 have come up. 2 more questions have come up. One is, how easy is it to move from another accounting software program to QuickBooks?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that it's going to depend on the software that you're moving from and how compatible it is with QuickBooks. It's also going to depend on the organization's needs. If the organization wants to put all of their historical detail into QuickBooks, that usually takes quite a bit of time to do that. And if they're okay with high level summary, beginning balances, then that's going to take a little bit less time. So I'll give you an accountant answer that it depends, but it's usually we have accountants that have done that before, so it's not too complex of a process.
So the next question is, can QuickBooks Desktop connect to Bloomerang donor database?
That is a great question. I don't know the answer to that. We'll have to look into that, unless Lindsey, you know that off the top of your head.
I looked ahead and I did a little Googling, and it looks like it's not going to be as seamless as if you were in QuickBooks Online. but it looks like you're able to kind of export files back and forth between the two, but it's not going to be like a connection where just all that information gets fed back and forth.
Great questions.
Are there any other questions? We appreciate you taking the time to spend some of your Thursday afternoon with us. So thank you so much. And we look forward to connecting with you all again soon. So have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.